The year is 2025. An extraterrestrial life form invaded the Earth. The situation became tense, and people had to retreat and acquire superpowers. 2137, Sam Levins is a high school student, experiencing the most important moment of human life in this world. Walking down the street, holograms of great gene soldiers greet people and agitate them to fight the alien invaders. A gene soldier or scientist is the only way to achieve participation in a genetic test. If you miss this opportunity, then this era will throw you to the very bottom of society, where a person simply becomes pathetic trash. Now, every person from early childhood goes through countless lessons and exams, and all this for the sake of the coveted pass to participate in the gene test. To have the best physique for the single test, people go through intense physical training day in and day out. And after so many years of hard work, today the outcome will be decided. Sam receives a call from his mother, who decides to make sure that his son knows exactly what he is getting into, because the drug has a 1% mortality rate. The son is trying to reassure his mother, since he has already passed all the pre-exams, and he would be sorry not to finish what he started. Many of his classmates did not even pass these tests. Mom still doesn't stop worrying, but she wishes her son all the best and believes that the main thing is that he returns healthy. They announce over the loudspeaker that students who want to take a single test and receive a gene injection must go inside. Sam says goodbye to his mother, saying that they are already starting to be called for a test. Inside the building, students are already crowding around and discussing what abilities they can get if they pass the test. Mr. Levins hears the conversations around him and realizes that everyone involved is equally determined to win. He headed to one of the designated entrances guarded by soldiers. He was asked to go to room 25 to receive a gene injection. Before you go inside, your fingerprints and iris are scanned, and the check is successful. Walking along the bright corridor, the young man thinks that he doesn't even know what type of gene he will receive. He remembers how in the corridor the girls were talking about an incredible type that increases physical strength. There is also an exceptional type. With its help, people are able to use unique abilities. But there is an important rule. You cannot awaken strange abilities. There are opinions that they are so useless, and because of this, they are easy to defeat. Sam thinks it would be better to awaken something normal, like X-ray vision. His imagination immediately draws images of how he stumbles upon a crowd of beautiful girls, and with the help of his ability, can see them without clothes. In the corridor, he notices a group of guys discussing their fears about the 1% of injection rejection. One of the boys says that he saw photos of those who were rejected. Their bodies look terrifying. But there is one optimist in this company, saying that they have a 99% chance of successful awakening, and from now on they will live happily ever after. The alarmist still insists that there is a big difference between 1% and 0. An optimist is called over the loudspeaker to receive an injection. The young man is sure that he will receive great abilities. Seeing this, Sam thinks that everyone seems to be hoping to successfully awaken the genes like himself. He finally approaches office 25 and, gathering his strength, wants to enter it. Just as he was about to knock on the office, a powerful explosion occurred to the side of him. The reason turned out to be that optimist, because of the explosion, the body was on fire in the corridor. His friends immediately rushed to run, and in the meantime he was emitting terrible dying screams. This turned out to be a side effect of the injection. The staff are trying to put out the fire faster and want to introduce another drug to try to save the boy. The employee extinguished the burning young man with a huge amount of solution from a fire extinguisher. His screams were no longer heard. They didn't have time to save him. His body was very damaged. This is already the 5th student today. This is another student whose genome was destroyed due to an abnormal reaction to an injection. Unfortunately, this young man turned out to be an exceptional fire type. His friends, seeing such a scene, turn pale before their eyes and decide to quickly get out of this place. Sam, who a couple of minutes ago wanted to boldly enter Office 25, now feels wild anxiety. He fully understands that he could die. The main character is seriously thinking about whether he should go into the office and whether he will come out alive. But compared to death, he is more afraid of becoming the waste of the genetic era. It seems to him better to travel beyond the Earth than to live a simple life. Sam decisively opens the door, states his status, first name, last name, and his personal number. A female voice responds by asking him to go inside while typing something in the virtual system. Noticing a pretty employee, Sam takes his breath away a little, and at that moment she asks him to answer a couple of questions before the procedure. The girl reminds him that he must be aware of the possible side effects of the injection, including death. The young man replies that he knows about this, and she asks the question, if he knows about all the risks, does he agree to take responsibility? Sam agrees with this. The whole stage is completed. The employee takes the syringe and asks the last question whether he is sure that he wants to receive this injection, thereby awakening the hidden genes in himself. Sam thinks for a couple of seconds, remembering the optimist who was firmly convinced that it would pass, but in the end turned out to be fried by fire. But even despite all this, he is sure that he will never back down, and in the end, Sam loudly says that he is confident in his decision. The employee is satisfied with the answer. She calls his name, status, personal number, and asks him to take off his pants. Hearing her words about pants, the hero was a little taken aback. It's not every day that a girl asks him to take off his pants in order to stick a needle in his ass. She explains that the injection will trigger the activation of the gene, and for best effect, it is injected into the femoral artery. After the explanation, the young man certainly doesn't feel any better, but he obediently begins to pull off his pants. He asks her to be more gentle, but apparently the employee did not have a light hand, because his screams were heard throughout the entire floor. The girl summarizes that the drug was successfully administered and distributed throughout the body. The young man's vital signs are stable. The frequency of brain waves is also normal, like the rest of the body. The employee decides to find out how the test subject feels. Sam replies that he feels absolutely nothing, but in his butt, he clearly feels a throbbing pain from the injection. 10 minutes later, she rechecks his vitals and asks again about his condition. But he still doesn't feel anything. This worries him because any changes indicate the effectiveness of the injection. Will he really not be able to wake up? Another 30 minutes pass. The employee notes that no changes were detected during the observation of student Sam Levins. The girl rises from her chair and, turning to the young man, says that this is unusual, and this is the first time she's encountered something like this. The employee approached him and asked him to stand up. For a second, the thought ran through his mind that this was the end, and he would never achieve anything. But he couldn't get up anymore. Sam feels like he's been shaken, and the pressure in his head begins to seem stronger and stronger. He abruptly falls off the couch and begins to make agonizing screams. The employee does not understand what is happening. He no longer hears the girl's screams and questions. He is only worried about his head, which feels like it's about to explode, whether the drug has really rejected him. The employee does not pay attention, begins to check his indicators at the terrible screams. His heart rate has reached 180. His temperature has reached 50 degrees. All his vital signs have deteriorated sharply. Sam feels that he is falling into the abyss. He ceases to feel his body. The hero feels the approach of his death. Finally, he feels light throughout his body. Sam wonders if he is dead. Opening his eyes, the hero sees that sitting in front of him is a huge astral body, resembling him in appearance. Looking at the body, he never ceases to wonder where he is, who is in front of him, and at the same time he begins to distantly hear the countdown. The countdown goes on and a powerful discharge occurs, so strong that it returns Sam to reality. The young man sits up on the couch and hears the employee report that after the first discharge, the student regained consciousness. Recovering from pain, he wants to find out what happened to him. The girl says that 14 hidden genes have awakened in his body. Sam cannot help but be pleased with this news because 14 hidden genes are quite cool. But he is not pleased with the further words of the employee that all these genes belong to the class of erudition. She provides him with a form after filling it out, which they will enter into the database. Sam still doesn't want to believe that all his genes are with the erudition type. He heard that they usually work in public relations departments. Most of the positions will be clerical. He may have to work as an office clerk all his life. The employee asks if he has any more questions, since she has already finished the report and he can read it. Almost crying, Sam wants to find out more about his newfound powers. The girl explains that awakening hidden genes does not mean that he will receive abilities. Even if he received them, they are unlikely to appear immediately, which is why they are classified as a hidden type. It seems that everything is clear to Sam from her words. In addition to everything in common, the employee offers him her business card. If he wants to apply to their university or learn more about the hidden type, he can contact her. Taking the business card, Sam learns that the employee's name is Annabelle Prince, and she is a professor at the Institute for the Study of Hidden Types. He could not even imagine that at such a fairly young age one could already be a professor. Rising from the bed, he says goodbye to the employee and is already reaching to open the door, but the girl tells him to wait. Annabelle warns him not to get caught by an organization called Dawn Redemption. To Miss Prince's surprise, Sam apparently had heard of this organization before. The Dawn Redemption was a group of people who betrayed humanity and conspired with alien invaders. Because of these traitors, they have suffered quite large losses for the last 100 years outside the Earth. Even now they do not sleep. They mainly kidnap gifted people for their experiments. The employee adds that 5 students who awakened 10 hidden genes have already gone missing. Sam thanks her for the warnings, but inside he begins to feel fear. He has as many as 14 hidden genes. The thought that he could become a target depresses him. Coming out into the central hall, he can't stop thinking about what abilities he has now. He thinks that it would be useful to gain some kind of combat skill. Sam remembers that when he lost consciousness, he saw 14 points of light. What is the connection between his genes and this astral body with points? His head still hurts by this time. Perhaps these are side effects from the injection. But his thoughts are interrupted by exclamations trying to draw his attention to themselves. He hears someone shouting his name. In front of Sam are his classmates, the joyful Stan Vaughn and the clearly not healthy-looking Chuck Engel. They ask how many genes the young man has awakened. Stan immediately says that Chuck awakened 11 genes, but they are all concentrated in his stomach, and in the future he may gain weight and be fatter than him. The prospect of becoming fatter than Stan clearly does not please the young man, and besides, it's not so easy to endure this pain in the stomach. Mr. Vaughn adds fuel to the fire, saying that there is nothing to worry about. Chuck must be destined to become the first transmutant glutton in history. The guy can't stand it and starts fighting with Stan, shouting that he shouldn't delude himself because his 8 genes are concentrated in the speed of his hands. Only God knows how useless he is. Meanwhile, Chuck decides to ask how many genes Sam has expressed, to which Sam awkwardly reveals that he has 14 hidden genes. The guys forget about their fight and, jumping up to the young man, begin to enthusiastically tell that they have heard the maximum about people who awaken 10 or more genes, but they could not possibly expect that Sam would manifest as many as 14. But in order to cool their enthusiastic exclamations, the main character says that he has an erudition class. They immediately distance themselves from him and will not help him believe what they just heard. Stan thoughtfully says that this is a rather difficult situation. Such genes are difficult to develop, and one cannot immediately find work with them. But Chuck tells the story of his relative, who is also an erudite. Before becoming a monarch, he changed 7 jobs, and now he is preparing to become an abbot. Sam, in front of them, argues that scholars are not in great demand. Their work is mainly related to the public. The choice of universities is also not great. They can only enroll in care. His situation is also complicated by the fact that he has a hidden type, so he doesn't even know what abilities he has. Perhaps he can contact a university professor. Maybe she can help him. Chuck decides to cheer up his friend, saying that thinking too much is harmful, suggests that everyone go have a snack together. He knows a place with a buffet. Sam refuses the offer, citing his headache, and promises that next time he will definitely treat them. As the friends follow the young man, they wonder if everything is okay with Sam. On the streets of the city, interactive advertising stands carry news about what is happening in the world. Talk about new federal policies, new plans for space railways, and also missing students. It is also reported that a team of famous heroes recently encountered drug sales. Sam's headaches do not let him go. Perhaps it is his genes that are making themselves felt. A strange feeling awakens in him. Is this really his ability? He feels how his perception has improved. He turns his gaze to the cafe opposite. Everything that happens there, the arrangement of things, the number of visitors, he feels all this perfectly. He can also feel what is happening in another room of this cafe, for example, in the kitchen. Immediately he reveals the peculiarity of this ability. He cannot see very small objects. Sam tries to look at the small object again, but he can't. It seems that the current perception of things is already the limit. He gives up his attempts and decides to go home to practice, but some strange feeling does not let him go. But this is connected rather not with his internal well-being, but with some external factor. And these feelings turn out to be not groundless, because at this moment, a man nearby is clearly spying on him. Sam decides to walk down the street a little more to confirm his suspicions. After walking a couple of meters, he notices that there are actually 3 guys following on his heels. They keep a certain distance from him, with members of the Dawn Redemption organization behind him. Sam begins to frantically calculate options for getting out of this situation. If they call the police, they will most likely not believe that some kid has stumbled upon a well-known gang. If he behaves recklessly, he will suffer inconspicuously or die. The young man decides that he needs to call Professor Annabelle, and today he will come to spend the night at the police station until he finds a solution. We are transported to the City Hall of Emerance, where a meeting is currently taking place. The commander of the Merry officers named John Morans is broadcasting. He leads to the fact that the report on the students for this year must be submitted, and anyone who dares to disobey an order will personally know the wrath of the commander. Professor Annabelle Prince was also present at this meeting, and in the midst of the commander's speech, she receives an alarming message on her phone. She asks John for permission to interrupt him to tell him important news. The employee says that one student named Sam Levins asks for help. He said that someone is stalking him. Annabelle wants to know if they will send help or if she should deal with it herself. The commander turns to an employee named Howard Lupin. He flinches at John's communication to him and asks him to wait a minute to give the correct order. The director of the Secret Service exhales and asks Professor Annabelle not to worry. The pursuers discovered by the student were sent by their Secret Service. Sam will be safe next to them. But the professor is wondering why send 3 employees for the sake of one erudite. Howard begins to wonder they sent 2 people. Why then there are 3 of them on the screen? Annabelle jumps up from her seat. She is sure that the 3rd person may be a member of the Dawn Redemption organization and believes that for his safety, he must be eliminated. The girl turns to Howard again, trying to find out whether he will send someone or whether she should go and deal with the intruder herself. The young man believes that all this is useless and it is worth leaving everything as it is. 2 agents are quite enough to protect this student. Annabelle is furious that they may have discovered an enemy stalker, but Howard does nothing, suggesting that the Secret Service are using Sam as bait. The chairman of the CARE University Admissions Committee, Hank Smith, intervenes in the conversation, saying that this is a completely rational plan, even though Sam has 14 genes, but he is only an erudite, so they will not suffer major losses, and he is an ideal bait. The girl is horrified and begins to quarrel with them even more. Because they dared to catch enemies on a student with so many hidden genes, she wants to know which of them gave such an order. Commander John replies in a menacing tone that it was his order. He did this in order to catch the members of the Dawn Redemption organization hiding in this building and to minimize the losses of university students due to their antics. Annabelle confronts him and says that he can't use a student who has just awakened hidden genes as bait in case something goes wrong. John calmly replies that there are no contingencies in this plan, and many changes, including the death of the decoy, were included in the plan. Sacrificing the life of the polymath student will ensure the safety of many people and will be able to gain some advantage. The girl can no longer listen to this nonsense. She asks for forgiveness and, citing the remaining matters she has, leaves. Hank tries to stop her and asks her not to leave the meeting, saying that if because of her arbitrariness the whole plan fails, then the council members will send her to trial, and this is not worth it. She abruptly removes his hand from her shoulder and replies that she won't do anything, but Sam needs to know about it. The commander allows her to inform the young man about this, but under no circumstances reveal the plan. Annabelle immediately sends a message to Sam while Hank stands behind her, reminding her not to reveal the plan. The message reaches Sam, and from it he understands that 2 of the people are agents introduced for his safety, and the 3rd is a person who may pose a danger to him. This puts him into even greater panic, why the 2 people who are supposed to protect him do nothing. The idea quickly dawns on him that he is bait, and he cannot stand still. He needs to find a way to escape. His legs themselves lead him to one famous chain of coffee shops in the city of Emerance. In order not to be on a deserted evening street, he decides to go inside, where an employee greets him and asks what he wants to order. Seeing that the young man is clearly tense about something, she repeats the question, and he relaxed and with a smile asks for hot tea with sweet potatoes and milk. repeating that he needs to boil the tea well. She hands him sweet tea, wishes him a good day, and warns him to be careful, the drink is very hot. Sam leaves the establishment and out of the corner of his eye notices a tall man standing at the entrance to the coffee shop. He goes further and with his peripheral vision continues to follow the object which does not lag behind him. The main character deliberately slows down his pace in order to reduce the distance between himself and the enemy, and a little later he sharply turns back. This is where the hot tea comes in handy. Lunging forward, he pours this boiling mixture right into the pursuer's face. His enemy clearly could not have predicted this. Pressing the burned part of his face, he is angry with Sam. But he stands on ceremony with the boy for a long time. He doesn't get ready, and jumping sharply flies at him, saying that if he can't take him alive, then it's better to take him dead. The idea with hot tea was not crowned with success, and now Sam is already flying in the air from a powerful blow to the chest. The main character flies into one of the store windows, breaking the glass into smithereens. The fragments fly around, almost hitting people just passing by. Having landed, Sam feels how powerful this blow was, and having analyzed it, thinks that the genes of his enemy are concentrated most likely in his legs. Mr. Levins gathers his strength, points his finger at the enemy, and begins to shout that this man is a member of the Dawn Redemption Organization. People around immediately pay attention to the suspicious man. Sam orders the Secret Service agents to arrest the enemy. Hearing all this, the people begin to panic and they run away, shouting for help. The Secret Service employees are shocked by the current, like an ordinary schoolboy, discovering a traitor and understand that things are bad. The man, noticing the Secret Service employees, rejoices. He kept wondering how many of them there are. Although he doesn't care about the number, he will still roll everyone into the asphalt. A battle begins between the employees and the traitor, which Sam watches. He notices that the employees are strong, but the enemy is not inferior to them. Meanwhile, the man gives a powerful rebuff to the employees, hitting one of them in the face. The main character, despite the severe pain, decides that this is all not good. He is the target, and therefore must find a way to help. But his attempts to get up were unsuccessful. He was really well finished. He sadly realizes that someone is in danger, and he cannot help. Sam regrets that he is just an erudite. Suddenly, he again falls into a space unknown to him and sees his astral body. Taking a closer look, he now understands that the 14 luminous points are his awakened genes. And from this, the following conclusion follows. It means that the gray ones are genetic base points that are not awakened in his body. Sam realizes that he can see the structure of his body right now. Perhaps this is his personal ability. Seeing in the projection that the stomach digests food to produce energy, and this power is immediately used by various parts of the body. The main character decides to see if he can control the flow of energy. He feels that there is a reaction. The energy on the astral body moves into the hand. Sam feels like his right arm is starting to hurt, as if the blood vessels are about to burst. If he wants to awaken a new gene point, he will have to train hard and for a long time or use expensive drugs. There is no other way out. He must redirect the flow of energy with the help of consciousness, but something goes wrong, and the point in his hand begins to glow more and more. At the same time, the enemy does not cease to actively rebuff the Secret Service employees. Even the fact that he is alone, and there are two of them, does not help them, and the enemy deftly avoids the blows. He clearly has more strength and skill. Using his signature kick, he sends his opponent flying. A little more time passed, and now the special unit employees were knocked out while the enemy towered over them and rejoiced in their victory. He finally turns his attention to Sam sitting outside the building and suggests that he surrender. The rival comes closer to the young man and warns that no one will save him. He was about to reach out to him with his hand, but suddenly Sam woke up and opened his eyes. The enemy clearly did not expect such an outcome of events, and the main character, taking advantage of his vulnerability, stabs him with his right hand directly in the stomach. The blow was not inferior to the opponent's strength and also sent him to conquer airspace. The wall stopped the flying object, blocking the path. An impressive dent appeared in the wall from the enemy. The Secret Service officers who had come to their senses couldn't believe their eyes. Hadn't they been told that this guy was just an erudite? Without wasting a second, they decide to fulfill their duty and take down the traitor. By this time, the meeting was continuing at the city hall. Only Annabelle was not listening to what was currently on their agenda. She kept glancing at her mobile every second. Sam, for some reason, doesn't write to her. She wonders whether he managed to escape from his pursuers or not. Howard's phone rang. He was clearly not happy that they dared to distract him during an important meeting. But after hearing the information conveyed to him over the phone, his face takes on a tense look. The commander notices this and asks him to report the situation. The director of the Secret Service begins to mumble indistinctly, barely pronouncing the name Sam Levins. Hearing this, Annabelle wants to immediately find out what is wrong with him. John loses his temper and yells at him, accusing the service staff of lack of competence, suspecting that the student was most likely harmed. Howard refuses, saying that the young man was not harmed and even helped to fight back. With his help, the agents neutralized and captured a member of the Dawn Redemption Organization. But now there is another problem. The whole city knows that the traitors are going to kidnap a man. They will stop any actions for a while. The commander is just as worried about how Sam was able to find out that he was being pursued by a man from the Redemption of the Dawn. Slamming his fist on the table, he wants to know who divulged this information to him. Annabelle understands what he is getting at and immediately sarcastically suggests checking his communication devices, at the same time thinking that the young man turned out to be savvy. John orders Howard to immediately investigate so that a 20,000-word report will be on his desk today. The young man unconditionally accepts the order. There was a flurry of movement into the Secret Service building in the city of Emerance. The identity of the pursuer was established. His name is Fred Paris. His call sign is Underpants. The employees report to the boss that previously only fighters of rank F appeared, and he has rank E, so 2 agents could not detain him. And Sam Levins is now in the interrogation room. He said that he himself struck Fred. The employees chalk it up to luck. Most likely the Secret Service employees exhausted the enemy, and Sam simply finished him off. Howard inquires about the student's current condition, to which his assistant explains how Mr. Levins kept yelling about how hungry he was. Therefore, they decided to first give him a snack. Entering the room, they could see a picture of how, one after another, the pies brought to him disappeared in Sam's mouth. Apparently, forced awakening of the gene point not only causes headaches, but also takes a lot of physical strength. The main character understands that he was brought here for interrogation. This was to be expected. The ability turned out to be very strong, but he cannot show it. Otherwise, he will end up on the surgical table for research. Sam admits that he received a message from Professor Annabelle and himself assumed that one of the observers was a bad person. Howard thanks the young man for his courage and apologizes for his agents, for whom he is ashamed. The director had already suspected that Annabelle had spilled the beans, and he also thinks that the young man opposite him showed himself properly. He clearly has potential. Sam thanks him and wants to know when he will be allowed to go back home. Howard decides that they will do this. Mr. Levins must sign a confidentiality agreement, and, as a reward for his assistance, he will be given 6 points and given $50,000 in cash. Sam reflects that according to the national merit rules, jointly signed by the genetic commissions, 10 points are awarded for capturing a rank E traitor, so he was awarded the majority. The director had already gotten up and wanted to leave, but a young man stopped him, asking if they planned to continue using him as bait. Howard responds that every year, geniuses with more genes appear in different cities, but many of them later became the target of the Dawn Redemption Organization. Therefore, they decided to secretly work with the Secret Service. As for Sam, the director mentions that he awakened 16 genes today, and now he is under the protection of Secret Service officers. There is only one unpleasant detail. The previous students with genes exceeding the number of 15 were not so resourceful, so they were all captured. Howard has already said a lot of unnecessary things, so he says goodbye and leaves to finish the remaining business. Going outside, Sam immediately decides to dial Annabelle's number and say that he has applied to Keir University, Faculty of Erudition, and perhaps he will soon become her student. The young man also says that the director of the Secret Service said that he will continue to be used as bait to prevent gifted students from disappearing. Sam wants to ask the professor if this is all true, to which she gives a positive answer. The main character understands that danger awaits him, and if he wants to create his own destiny, then he has only one way. This is to become stronger. Meanwhile, in the Secret Service lobby, the main computer lights up and begins to transmit a message that object number 37 has begun to show unusual activity, and that if there is no response for a long time, the task will be solved according to plan number 1. 3 days later, good news comes to the Levinson house. Sam has been accepted into Care University. While his mother rejoices, the son barely crawls out of his room, holding his stomach from hunger. He immediately heads to the table to have breakfast, and his parents never cease to rejoice and already want to send this good news to all their relatives. It's not without reason that Sam is plagued by hunger. In 3 days, he has exhausted his strength to open another gene base point in his left leg. His body can no longer withstand it. The young man even fainted while concentrating. But what's even worse is that it had zero effect. For some reason, the right hand seems more sensitive. It is difficult for him today to become strong, but by entering the University of Genetic Evolution, studying advanced knowledge and using it in practice, he will undoubtedly be able to achieve his goal. The father decides to give instructions to his son before going to university, telling him not to stoop to promiscuity and to do this only at night, but not too often. Otherwise, the body will be exhausted. Sam clearly did not expect such parting words and is now awkwardly trying to get out of it, saying that it was all a mistake and he is not like that. But his father interrupts him again, saying that he and his mother have prepared a gift for him. Looking into the box, Sam sees rows of evenly laid capsules. His parents explain to him that the university will require a lot of resources from him, so they give him energy capsules. The main character again did not expect this kind of gift from his parents. These were energy capsules of rank E. These capsules are an important gene supplement for enhancing strength, but the vast majority of ordinary people can only afford F-rank capsules since they are cheaper. Sam begins to worry that his parents have spent too much on him. The father objects to him, but they do not have high salaries, but over the years he has accumulated savings, and they are more than enough to buy these supplements, while the mother is worried about her son and expresses fears about the bandits from the Redemption of the Dawn. He and his father don't want him to be a hero and simply tell him to take care of himself. Sam calmly, and with a smile on his face, replies that he understands them. In the evening, in his room, he again begins to discover his genes and begins to try to concentrate for this. As a result, after a while, he manages to get into the world of his astral body. Sam watches as many lines appear in his left leg, showing accumulated energy. He feels pain in his physical body. His leg is swollen again because there is too much energy, and if it is concentrated in one point, it will explode. The main character begins to concentrate more strongly. Changes are immediately noticeable on the astral body. Energy begins to be distributed throughout the body. The distributed energy begins to light up at many points. Even in the left leg, the distributed force lights up 2 additional points. Screaming in pain, the hero regains consciousness and tries to catch his breath. He finally succeeded. He was able to awaken 2 more gene points. Sam falls onto the bed, his whole body aching. He reasons that an E-rank capsule will only be able to restore energy, but not mental strength. His eyes slowly begin to droop. He even seems to have time to come up with a solution to the problem, but he cannot resist, and finally falls asleep. He awakens from the cries of his mother, who rushes to make sure that her son is already awake. Not wanting his mother to catch him like this, Sam abruptly jumps out of bed, jumps to the floor, and pushes off. But he clearly did not take into account the new points he had awakened, because his jump was so powerful that it threw the hero to the ceiling. Having hit his head, he falls onto the bed, and pieces of the ceiling begin to fly on top of him. The parents, hearing this noise, ask if everything is okay with their son. Rubbing the back of his head, Sam tries to show with his voice that everything is in order, realizing that the strength of his leg has finally increased. But such noise could not leave the hero's parents alone, and they burst into his room. Sam gets out of bed and, still rubbing the back of his head, smiles sweetly, telling his mother how hungry he is. But his parents notice another intriguing detail when their son managed to pump himself up so much, because before he was like a match. Yesterday, Sam was able to awaken gene points in 2 places. In his left leg and in his brain, he himself felt how his strength increased. What is surprising is that the strength of the right palm has also increased. It seems that the genes of which parts of the body directly influence each other. But it's best to double-check all this, and the young man decides to throw the card. He tries to hit a tin can with his card, which stands in the other corner of the room, but misses. Strength is, of course, good, but the main thing is to learn the correct throwing technique. All the cards he threw ended up stuck in the wall. His technique was clearly not enough at the moment. His gaze is drawn to a plate filled with beans on the table. Sam is struck by the idea that the airflow can change the flight path of the map, since it is large but weighs little. But this scheme clearly will not harm the flight of soybeans. Having fired one of the beans, it flies with force and pierces the tin can. This sight impresses Sam. If you use a metal ball instead of a bean and hit it not in a jar but in a person, the outcome will be fatal. This thought makes the main character happy, because now if he gets into trouble again, he will at least be able to fight back. Finally, the solemn day arrives, admission to the university. Many people gathered to celebrate. Parents wish their children a bright future and bright youth. Wishing them strives to contribute to the association. While Sam's mother tries to contain her emotions, the father reminds him that his son should take good care of himself, and if he suddenly needs help, he shouldn't be shy and tell them about it right away. Then, out of nowhere, Chuck appears and begins to reassure his friend's parents, saying that everything is under control. He will look after his friend, and with him, their son will definitely not go hungry. But someone is clearly missing, and as he finishes chewing his chicken leg, Chuck wonders where Stan has gone. Sam says that their friend called him in his spare time and told him that he had entered Coulter University. Chuck is dissatisfied that he was left in the dark. The main character tries to explain that Stan did not want to tell him, since the boy's mother insisted on entering Coulter, because there are more opportunities there. The only requirement for admission is that after graduation he will have to join Army. The comrade is not happy with this news, because he knows that 20% of the advanced detachments, which Stan will join after graduation, are the first to die. Sam believes that there is no need to be sad. Their friend is a genetic talent. He is strong and fast, quite combat-ready, so they should be confident about him. The loudspeaker announces that students should take their seats as there are only 10 minutes left. The main character says goodbye to his parents. They shout after him that as soon as he gets there, he will definitely let them know. All students bring their things and try to get comfortable in the transport that will take them to the university. Throwing his suitcase onto the shelf, Chuck promises that he will have an affair with the first beauty of the university, since he spent his pink school years on knowledge and preparation. The guys sitting nearby, hearing his speech, begin to mock him, saying that they heard about the genes located in his stomach and how they stopped letting him into buffets throughout the city. They do not stop their ridicule, adding that what a first beauty he is, because he is far from even the 10th. Sam decides to stand up for his friend and orders Metacallops to shut his mouth if he can't talk. But Met doesn't see anything wrong with smart people telling the truth. The atmosphere is heating up and the newly minted students are already thinking about starting a fight. But a man who looks like a professor manages to besiege them. He orders them to sort out all their relationships on the street. T grabs Sam by the shoulders and asks him to better forget about everything, because there are teachers here. The main character finally decides to tell Meta to keep his mouth shut from now on. This is for his own safety. The teacher once again warns the children that one more such prank, and he will show them a happy future. The stern man decides to finally introduce himself. His name is Roast Fomet. He works in the education department of the city of Emerance, and he was appointed to accompany them. Roast hopes that students will listen to his commands and maintain discipline on the road, but if someone decides to excel, he will be more than happy to teach them a lesson. Sitting down, Chuck advises Sam to calm down and distracts him by asking whether his friend knows who is sitting next to Metacallops. Next to him, it turns out, is a student named Tong Werner. He is a real machine, and during a single test, he awakened 16 genes. Sam remembers that Secret Service Director Howard may have mentioned this student. Also sitting not far from them is a talented girl named Marie Sank. Chuck believes that this is the perfect balance of strength and beauty. The young man already has hearts in his eyes. Sam tearfully asks him not to make him blush and orders him to erase this stupid face from his face. Professor Annabelle, already familiar to us, suddenly enters the room, leaving everyone around indifferent. Here and there, conversations are heard about what a beautiful woman she is. Her charm and attractiveness catches everyone's eye. She introduces herself to the students, and is also among them accompanying them. Annabelle warns that if anyone has any questions or requests for help, they can safely contact her. Sam's heart begins to beat a little faster. Did the professor also get into this car? At the same time, the transport continues to move further along the given route. Commander John is informed that the transport convoy has already set off, and each vehicle has launched a generator of ultrafine radiation particles, and all signals are turned off except for the military communication channel. In recent years, due to the active implementation of the single genetic test policy, members of the criminal organization have lost a stable source of fighting forces, so the registration season is a high risk of being attacked. The soldier adds that usually the enemies set up an ambush in the middle of the route, so this time it is up to the commander to decide which route the convoy will take. There are about 100 cars here, and finding a car with students is more difficult than taking to the skies. John decides that he needs to be more careful. If the enemies realize that they cannot take the students, they will immediately kill all the soldiers. Machine number 3 is the main priority. They have no room for error. Sam realizes that he, his friend Chuck, Tong Werner, and Marie Sank are the students with the most genes this year. In other words, the treacherous organization has definitely noticed their car. Kyoto, where they are heading, is in the east, but for some reason they are moving to the west. Apparently, they deliberately chose this route in order to confuse their enemies. Outside the window, the young man watches how the forest is entwined with vines and how many unusual plants grow here. Sam thinks, how many years have people not set foot in the wild? Perhaps he himself will try to visit there in the future. Roast asks everyone to pay attention. In 30 minutes, they will reach the first supply point. The escort warns that the car will not stay there for long, so they only have 3 minutes. Under no circumstances should they approach the wall, otherwise the soldiers will kill them. The vehicle parks, and upon going outside, Chuck notes that this base looks scary. Seeing everything that is happening and soldiers armed to the teeth, Sam understands that it is not safe here. Students suddenly run out of their cars and begin to rush to the restrooms, since they have already spent many hours on the road. Having done all his business, Sam notices that a man has locked himself in the booth, and it's almost time to go back. The young man decides to use one of his abilities. Using telepathy, he wants to quietly check who is in this booth. Having illuminated the booth, he realizes to his surprise that their teacher Roast is in it, who is trying to stuff something into his mouth. Sensing something strange, the teacher quickly opens the door and looks outside. Not finding anyone in his field of vision, he decisively moves on. While Sam is hiding behind one of the walls, he suspects that the teacher is doing something in secret. The young man decides to turn to the soldiers of this supply point for help. He tells them that their teacher was nervously trying to stuff something into his mouth, hiding in one of the booths. The soldiers, hearing this, cannot contain their laughter. Sam does not share their fun. They want to know why the student was spying on his teacher, but the hero's excuses are interrupted by the announcement that there are only 30 seconds left, demanding that everyone immediately return to their seats. Sam takes off because the cars are about to start driving away. Roast, who is accompanying him, is waiting for him at the gangway, and is already beginning to scold the student for the fact that everyone is now waiting only for him. Already at the entrance to the transport, Sam decides to ask the teacher what he ate then. This question took Roast by surprise. He begins to scream and ask what kind of nonsense his ward is talking about. Sam turns around and says with a smile that he just wanted to know if there was a canteen on base. Entering the salon, the main character apologizes to everyone for making everyone wait for him. Walking to his place, Sam can't help but think that Roust Fomet is clearly hiding something. The convoy leaves the base, and while the main character continues to watch the escort out of the corner of his eye, his friend Chuck offers him a snack. Mr. Levins also noted that the suspect had 2 dentures, but something was clearly wrong with them. He is consumed by the thought of whether he should inform the soldiers about this, or maybe they are at the same time. He doesn't know for sure, so there's no point in putting himself at risk. But if anyone needs to report this, then there is one person whom he can trust. Sam, without a shadow of a doubt, goes to Professor Annabelle and asks permission to sit next to her. She is interested in what he wants from her, and the young man begins to tell her noodles about the fact that he wants to ask a couple of questions about a hidden type of genes. The girl allows him to sit next to him, which causes a heated discussion on the part of young students who believe that such a simpleton should not sit with a goddess. But the professor is not stupid. and as soon as Sam lands next to her, she wants to find out what exactly he wanted from her. The young man carefully hands her the phone, where in the notes he described the whole situation with the oddities of Teacher Roost, separately mentioning his two strange prostheses. Seeing this information, Annabelle immediately gets up from her seat and, heading to the teacher, asks permission to check his mouth. Roast, alarmed, also gets up from his seat, but does not have time to do anything, because the professor has already pressed him to the ceiling with her force. He tries to find out from her what she is doing, but the girl weakens her strength and he falls to the floor with a roar. The soldiers, noticing this mess, take a fighting position and hold the escorts at gunpoint. But Professor Annabelle, with her most fearful gaze and as if not in her own voice, orders them to sit down. The soldiers, trembling with fear, let go of their weapons, obeying her orders. Meanwhile, the teacher is already wringing Roast's hands behind his back while he shouts that she seems to have gone crazy. Sam has already rushed to the suspect. On Annabelle's orders, he is trying to pull his dentures out of his mouth. The main character manages to get 2 dentures. He hands them to his ally so that she can conduct an analysis. One glance was enough for the professor to understand that these are magnetized tantalum transmitters. This is a generator of secondary ultra-low waves. Such devices are extremely rare. They are capable of bypassing conventional protection. Realizing the seriousness of the whole situation, Annabelle wants to know who he was passing on the information to. Roast begins to laugh. He didn't even think that he would be discovered, but even with this outcome, they won't be able to do anything. Now no one will be able to escape. Meanwhile, the employee reports to the commander that the transport convoy has begun to move. As soon as they reach the plane, the organization of traitors will no longer reach them. But then another employee bursts into the office and reports that car number 3 has gone off the intended course. The messenger reports that vehicle number 3 is requesting direct communication with the commander. Professor Annabelle gets in touch. She reports that an enemy spy was caught in their car, and at the moment their route has been revealed. Commander John is beside himself with rage. He orders to immediately go to car number 3 and change the route. Also, while a convoy of vehicles is moving forward to help, he requests that aviation equipment be convened from nearby military units. The controller standing at the control panel shouts that he notices several flying objects in the air. Energy charges were launched by the enemies in the direction of their transport column. John commands the vehicles to maneuver, but his subordinates were no longer able to carry out this order. The discharges turned out to be faster and had already undermined the middle of the column. John takes the helm and tells all employees that the enemy has precision weapons. The remaining vehicles must hold the line and wait for reinforcements. Annabelle declares an emergency, and as per instructions, she tells everyone to dismantle their seats. Everyone obeys her orders, and while Sam is dismantling the chair, he thinks about how the organization of traitors easily reached the students. This is all completely different from what is advertised on TV. Having made shields from specially equipped chairs, the students slowly begin to lower the cars down the ramp. The commander has already arrived on the battlefield, and on the radio he orders to launch projectiles with electromagnetic interference and guided mines, since the enemies have devilish impulsive guns. More and more it becomes more and more dangerous. Every now and then explosions and return shots occur everywhere. Radars detect that an object has appeared in the air, and the guidance systems suddenly begin to shoot simultaneously at one place. From the clouds of smoke, enemies with guns at the ready appear sharply. They deftly maneuver in the air on flying boards. But on the ground they are met by local troops, who successfully fight back and shoot down many from their aircraft. Seeing how deftly the people who got out of his car took weapons, Sam realizes that the soldiers were undercover in the form of students. It seems that the army prepared much more thoroughly than he expected. The commander is informed that reinforcements will arrive at their location in about 3 minutes. Suddenly, the ground under their feet begins to shake, and John, realizing that something is clearly about to happen, shouts that the enemy is underground. As soon as they manage to jump and lift their heels off the ground, they begin to fight their way up under them, like spears made of stones. At that moment, many soldiers are overtaken by death. It becomes clear to everyone that this is not just a weapon, it is the ability of the owner of a hidden type. Annabelle immediately clarifies that this is at least a gradually altered V-rank genetic mutant. Perhaps he has a complete transformation, but his attack radius is limited. In the distance of the forest, they noticed two opponents, one of whom clearly launched a final deadly attack on them. The troops concentrate on the enemies and return fire. But not everything is so simple. The enemy takes out a katana, and with lightning speed, he fights off and dodges bullets. The villain shouts that there is no benefit from training soldiers. Today they will all die. With a new round of strength, he makes his earthen spears even larger, and is already pushing the machine onto him with soldiers. The ground where ordinary students stand is also not in a calm state. It begins to collapse. The enemy's target is a car with students. Realizing that things can't get any worse, the commander quickly heads out to neutralize the enemy. The enemy does not have time to get his bearings before John has already cut his katana and pierced the traitor through with a spear. A powerful explosion occurs, which throws the accomplice to the side. Henchmen run to the traitor, and the man with the hidden gene orders them to buy him a little more time. At this time, help finally arrives for the guys. Chuck notices that the commander attracted all the enemy fire to himself. Having formed a strong shield around himself, not a single bullet could injure John. He successfully continues to withstand the onslaught of his opponents and scatters them with his spear in all directions. Chuck and Sam, watching this, understand what the expression transcendental power means. Strange sounds begin to be heard from the forest, similar to the clatter of huge paws and hooves. Marie is the first to notice this. Annabelle immediately realizes that these sounds can only be made by mutants who came to the aid of their enemy. Noticing these creatures, the army does not stand still and begins to fire at them from cannons in order to prevent them from getting closer. But the animals turn out to be no less agile, and now the tiger destroys one of the cannons, thereby allowing its relatives to break through. The wolves begin to cut the soldiers with their claws and bite their teeth into human flesh. Sam realizes with horror that the last line of defense is almost destroyed. Roast, lying on the ground, continues to gloat, saying that he warned them of the consequences. Annabelle orders him to be silent and tramples the traitor's head into the ground with all her might. She tries to calm down the panicking students by saying that there are other teachers here besides her, so no one will touch them. Having gathered with other teachers who also have more than one ability, they act as the last line of defense. One of the mutants already wanted to attack the remaining soldiers, but the teacher manages to stop him in time, who suddenly appeared behind him and, grabbing the tiger's skull, began to squeeze it with force. Another young man who looks like a wolverine is constantly cutting down wolves right and left. Commander John yells for them to quickly move towards the third vehicle because the traitors are targeting it. Annabelle replies that everyone has already understood this and there is no point in commanding now. Sam thinks that the professor most likely also has a hidden type. He wonders what methods of struggle she will use. He expected to see anything, but Annabelle simply took out metal balls and, throwing them with force, inflicted a ton of lethal damage on the enemies. She notices another mutant who has already closed his paw on the neck of one of the students. The girl immediately carries out the same attack on him. The tiger manages to dodge while releasing the hostage. The enemy is angry. Where are their distant support units now? Meanwhile, the already familiar energy charges are directed towards Annabelle. But fortunately, the girl manages to use the shield, and the bullets simply get stuck in it, unable to penetrate the barrier. But the enemy's attacks continue with redoubled force. The professor continues to build an even larger and more powerful shield around himself. The mutant decides to try to call for some more reinforcements and emits a loud whistle as best he can. Help comes to the enemy from the air in the form of giant eagles, which quickly dive down to tear the enemy with their sharp claws. Animals and birds begin to attack with redoubled force. The army and teachers begin to rapidly lose ground. In all this chaos, Sam hears Marie screaming for help. He already sees an angry wolf flying at her from above. He thinks how good it is that the steel ball he brought in advance, just in case, really came in handy. The ball flew by so quickly that Marie didn't even have time to understand how the wolf that almost killed her ended up with a hole in its neck. But this maneuver was noticed by the mutant tiger, who had already identified Sam as his next target and was already rushing to finish him off. The tiger was already hovering above him in the air when suddenly Chuck appeared in front of him, putting his shield forward. But any board was unlikely to be able to stop a mutant with potentially enormous power. The tiger's punch slams Chuck into a nearby rock, leaving a large dent behind him. Sam decides to use the old trick and again, with all his strength, launches a steel ball towards the enemy. The tiger fails to dodge and, landing on his paws, looks at his opponent with a brutal look, while a small abrasion from the ball is visible on his forehead. The main character is very frightened by this. The mutant's head turned out to be too strong. The attack with the ball did not kill him. He was just about to reach into his pocket again, but his opponent did not stop, and without giving him a second of extra time, the monster was already approaching him. But out of nowhere, powerful plant stems began to emerge from the ground, and they instantly twisted the mutant. Marie came to the aid of Sam. Using one of her genes, she tells her comrade to hurry up. The main character again takes out his balls and throws them as far as possible. The tiger begins to laugh, thinking that his enemy simply missed, but it was not Sam's mistake. He hoped that he could throw them as far as possible, and his plan succeeded. The balls were able to fly to the forest, where additional traitor troops were hiding at that time. Annabelle's shelling suddenly stops, and she realizes where her real target is. The bound mutant screams for her comrades to continue firing at her and not give her opportunities. But it's too late. The professor uses his power again, and in quick bursts begins to shoot balls at his new target. This line of defense of the enemy is defeated. Annabelle's power is so powerful that even the crowns of perennial trees turned into splinters. The mutant breaks the vines that were holding him back and is already flying towards Sam, who is unable to find his bearings. But the tiger is stopped by a ball flying through his skull. The monster emits a loud, dying cry. The young man's savior turns out to be the same Professor Annabelle. All the mutants run away from her. Even celestial creatures are overtaken by karma, and the balls quickly knock them down. Help also comes to her from the air. The ships launch an attack on the remaining mutants. Looking up into the air, the commander feels a little lighter at the sight of their warships. One of the main traitors orders a retreat. The operation fails due to the fact that they were unable to finish off the girl. But John does not even think about letting go of the enemy. He is rapidly advancing towards him. The enemy commands his minions to execute the third emergency evacuation plan. Lined up in one line,